All right, so we have another Tacoma in the shop, getting a tried and true basic suspension system that works pretty well. It's not the high-end Fox stuff, but it's definitely a decent kit for the money. And this is the Bilstein 6112 shocks. These are welded together steel construction. They use snap ring grooves that will preload the spring. So as this collar here, you can see the snap ring right here if you look closely. So that snap ring you could adjust. You could pull down for less lift, and the higher you put it up. We always go one down from the maximum preload, and that pushes this collar, which is basically pushing preload on the spring. So it's squishing the spring together a little more, and that's what's giving you lift. The reason why this is so much better than running a spacer is because the shock from where it bolts on here and where the top cap is still the same length, actually a little longer with this than stock, so you actually gain some wheel travel, versus a spacer lip is pushing the shock down from the top and allowing this to go further down, which then allows the A-arms to droop out too far and your CV boots and your axles and CV joints and everything to bind. Your steering will bind, you'll have all kinds of problems. And that's because this is the top spacer. What they do is they fill this up with more space, pushing the whole shock down. That also stops the lower A-arm. I'll show you here. You have this bump stop right here that hits the A-arm. Well, when you push everything down, you probably have seen people when they bottom out the truck, they're not bottoming out this bump stop, they're actually bottoming out the travel of the shock. So this shaft right here, where this is, will bottom out on here, which then puts the load on the bottom part of the shock. And we've seen it push this into the shock, brake, and oil go all over the place. That's because you're cutting back your wheel travel. So if you space that spacer down 2 inches, then you're pushing this shock, the bottom of this, down 2 inches, which 2 inches on that shock mount, if you guys took geometry class, between that pivot and that ball joint, if that's in the middle and that gets pushed down 2 inches, you're actually losing 4 inches of wheel travel on compression. So that's where the spacers, you feel that rough ride. Well, the rough rides, you're just bottoming out so quickly, you don't have any compression wheel travel. You basically pushed all your suspension down, causing a lot of issues. So that's where these type of shocks is what we call a good economical way to add suspension to your vehicle properly. So you're not losing suspension travel, you're actually gaining suspension with these shocks, and you're gaining performance. This is an equivalent to the 2.5 inch, like when we run a Fox DSC really high-end shock. This is equivalent on piston size, and these work really well if you're on a budget. And that's why we'll use these shocks. Then we're gonna pair those with our upper control arms. These have our O-ring sealed billet aluminum cap, and that's got our Camburg X-Joint down in there. And our X-Joint has these high angle boots that are all molded on. Heat treated alloy steel shank, heat treated alloy steel body. Here's the boot here. Once again, you can see like the lip that we have on here, so how they work. So anyways, that, and then they got the double lip seal up underneath of here, and that sits up on top of the spindle. So this is fully sealed, a true sealed ball joint. There's other ball joints out there that are trying to compete with uniballs, and they claim they're sealed, but they don't even run a dust boot on the bottom. So it's really not sealed. Where uniball is going to be a superior strength, but more maintenance, where our X-Joint's very close in strength because of the heat treated alloy steel we're using. And these get a tremendous amount of angle, but they're sealed. So if you're in the mud and salt and snow, all weather conditions, that's where this joint's far superior than what's on the market, because we're working on coming out with better products for everyone. And we're able to do that with the volume we're making these A-arms in now. Once again, billet cap, full urethane bushings, inner sleeves are steel thick washers on the outsides of the bushings. The construction, the weld quality, everything. These are all made in Huntington Beach, California. All of the components, the billet aluminum, The tubing, everything is domestic material. We make it here, all high-end products. So right now we're getting ready to install. So we use the spring compressor. We take off the factory upper spring seat, reassemble everything just like it would be on the stock shock. And that's where this becomes labor intensive, as you can see, but we do everything properly with the right tools and we're good to go. It's a pretty simple installation if you have good mechanical skills and you have some experience, and that's pretty much it. So you just have to take the stock stuff apart and get it off the vehicle, and then do the spring compressor, reuse those parts, put them back on, and then just bolt them on. There's no adjusting other than pre-setting up that snap ring groove on the bottom there, and then you get the upper control arm on there, etc. So once again, Toyota Tacoma, getting a simple yet effective suspension system put on, upper control arms, the Bilstein 6112 shocks, and this will be definitely a good ride quality. And we give the suspension like a rating of 7.5 out of 10 when you're comparing it to, say, like a Fox with the DSC reservoirs, but you're comparing the very best on the market to what we would call the best economical way to do your suspension with these Bilsteins. Well, thanks for watching.